Welcome to Echoes of the Midnight, a channel where every whisper hides a haunting truth. Sit back, turn off the lights, and let the midnight tales pull you into their chilling embrace. The question is, can you make it to the end?
The old house at the edge of town had been standing empty for years, its once beautiful white paint now peeling, its windows dull and lifeless. Yet, to Lily Miller, it was perfect. After months of grief, the death of their parents still felt like a heavy stone in her chest, but moving to this new place, a fresh start was supposed to make everything better. Emily Miller, her twin sister, was less sure. "This place is strange," Emily said, her voice shaky as she glanced at the crooked fence that seemed to lean inward, like it was trying to hide something. Her wide brown eyes searched Lily's face for reassurance, but there was none. Silence hung between them, thick and uncomfortable, as if the house itself had swallowed every sound around them. "Stop being such a worrywart," Lily said, flipping her long auburn hair over her shoulder. She forced a smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's just an old house. We'll make it our home." Emily didn't respond, but her unease deepened as they stepped inside. The air in the house was thick with the smell of old wood and dust. The corners were coated in layers of grime, and it felt as if the house had been holding its breath for years. The wooden floors groaned under their weight, a sharp, eerie sound that echoed in their bones. The front room was large, with high ceilings and an old chandelier hanging from above like an unspoken promise of forgotten memories. A cold draft swept through, making Emily shiver. The house didn't feel abandoned, it felt alive, waiting, breathing in a way that unsettled her. "There's something off about this place," Emily whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "Like, it's been waiting for us." Lily, however, was already distracted by the view out the window. The house sat on a hill, overlooking a small neighborhood. It was a sleepy little town, the kind where everyone knew each other's business. But in the distance, there was something else, something new. A figure stood at the edge of the sidewalk, watching them. "Hey, Emily, look!" Lily nudged her sister and pointed toward the figure. "Who's that?" Emily's eyes followed Lily's finger. For a moment, her heart skipped a beat. Standing across the street, near a row of old houses with overgrown lawns, was a man tall, with dark hair that caught the sunlight in a way that seemed almost too perfect. His gaze was locked on the house, but when he saw them looking, he smiled. It was a polite, yet slightly mysterious grin. "Probably just someone from the neighborhood," Lily said, her voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and excitement. She had always been the more outgoing twin, eager to make connections and put down roots. She turned back to the interior of the house, already making plans in her mind for how to redecorate. But Emily couldn't tear her eyes away from the man. There was something about him. His smile, perfect as it was, seemed too flawless, as if it didn't quite belong. His eyes were what held her, their deep, piercing gaze, so intense it felt like he could see straight through her, right into her soul. "Do you think we should go introduce ourselves?" Lily asked, already making her way toward the door before Emily could answer. "Lily." Wait, Emily's voice was tight, a warning she couldn't ignore. Lily paused, her hand still on the doorknob, looking at her sister with mild confusion. "What? I don't know. He just seems off. Like he's too interested in us." "In me," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't shake the unease swirling in her stomach. Lily laughed, the sound light and carefree. "You're overthinking it, Em. It's just a guy. Who knows, maybe he's just being friendly. Let's go say hi." Before Emily could protest, Lily had already opened the door, stepping out onto the porch, leaving her sister standing behind her. Emily felt the weight of the house around her, pressing in, as though it were closing off the world outside. The man hadn't moved from his spot across the street, but his eyes were now fixed on them, unblinking. And when Lily stepped onto the porch, he waved. Emily swallowed, unsure if it was nothing or if it was everything. Maybe it was just the tension of the move playing tricks on her mind, but something about him unsettled her, a magnetic pull that she couldn't explain. Lily, already charmed by the stranger's attention, waved back enthusiastically. She stepped off the porch, making her way toward him, her pace confident and eager. Emily stayed behind, caught between fear and fascination. The man's smile grew wider, almost predatory, but Lily didn't seem to notice. Emily's heart pounded. Something was terribly wrong. The first few days in the new house felt like a blur. The excitement of the move faded quickly, leaving behind an unsettling emptiness that Emily couldn't quite shake. She had hoped the change of scenery would bring some peace, but instead the house seemed to settle around her like a weight, each creak and groan a reminder that it wasn't quite as empty as it appeared. Lily, on the other hand, was determined to embrace their new life. She unpacked boxes with an energy that made Emily feel as though she was dragging her feet behind her. "It's so beautiful here," Lily said, throwing open the kitchen window to let the breeze whip through the house. "I'm telling you, Em, this place is going to feel like home in no time," but Emily didn't feel the same. She stood at the window, her eyes drawn once more to the man from across the street. He was standing in his usual spot, staring directly at her. This time he wasn't smiling, and that bothered her more than she cared to admit. His gaze was intense, unwavering, and there was something about it that made her skin crawl. It was as if he could see right through her. "Lily." "He's out there again," Emily muttered, her voice tight. A chill crept down her spine, but Lily, busy with her own thoughts, didn't seem to notice. "Oh, come on," Lily said, not even looking up from the pile of boxes she was sorting. "He's just being friendly. Maybe he's wondering how we're settling in. You should go say hi." Emily turned away from the window, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. She'd tried to brush it off before, but the feeling that something was wrong, something about him, had only grown stronger. "I don't know," she said, her words hesitant. "There's something strange about him. His eyes, they're too intense, almost like he's watching us." Lily rolled her eyes. "You're always so suspicious, Em." "Maybe he just thinks we're new neighbors and wants to make us feel welcome," she flashed a grin. "Besides, you're not scared of a little attention, are you?" Emily didn't answer, the unease gnawing at her. The house had been silent since they moved in, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It felt unnatural, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. That evening after dinner, Emily couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her bed, the sheets twisted around her body. Her mind kept returning to the man across the street. She had tried to ignore it, but the sense of being watched wouldn't leave her. Then, a soft creak came from downstairs, nothing more than a whisper of sound, but enough to send a shiver through her. She lay still, holding her breath, straining her ears. It came again, another creak, followed by a soft scrape like something or someone was moving in the hallway. Her heart pounded as she slowly sat up. The bedroom door was cracked open just enough for her to see the dark hallway beyond. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, then hesitated. The flashlight on her nightstand gleamed faintly in the moonlight. She grabbed it, her fingers trembling. "Lily," she whispered, but there was no answer. Lily had already fallen into a deep sleep, leaving Emily alone with the house's strange noises. Emily stood slowly, her feet cold against the floorboards as she crept toward the door. She cracked it open, her breath caught in her throat. The hallway seemed unnaturally dark, and the shadows stretched long, flickering like smoke in her peripheral vision. Every floorboard seemed to groan in protest beneath her feet as she stepped cautiously into the hallway. It was eerily quiet, save for the sound of her own breath. As she moved forward, her eyes were drawn to the old portrait of a woman hanging on the far wall. The woman's eyes were fixed on her uncomfortably so, and Emily flinched. But she pushed forward, heading toward the stairs. A soft whisper so faint, she wasn't sure if she heard it or not, brushed against the back of her neck. "It's waiting for you." She spun around, but the hallway was empty. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she felt a cold sweat creep up her spine. The house felt alive now, pulsing with a strange energy, like it was breathing with her. Terrified, Emily turned and ran back to her room. She slammed the door shut and locked it behind her, her mind racing. She had to shake this feeling off. She lay in bed, wide awake, staring into the darkness of the room. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching her just beyond the threshold of the door. The next morning, Emily walked into the kitchen, her face pale. Lily was humming as she brewed coffee, completely oblivious to the tension hanging in the air. "What's the matter with you?" Lily asked, noticing Emily's drawn expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Emily hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the window. The man was gone, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching them. Somewhere. "Maybe I'm just tired," Emily said weakly. "But I keep hearing things at night. And I don't think this house is what it seems." Lily gave her an amused look. "You've been watching too many horror movies, Em. It's just an old house. These things creak and groan. You're probably just hearing the wind." But Emily could see it, the subtle flicker of doubt in Lily's eyes, the brief hesitation before she smiled. Emily couldn't help but wonder if her sister was starting to sense it too. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences continued to escalate. Doors that had been closed were found open. Items disappeared and reappeared in odd places, like the kitchen counter or under the stairs. It was as if the house itself was shifting, responding to something or someone. Emily couldn't take it any longer. She was convinced the house was haunted, and it wasn't just the house, it was him. Adam. Every time she looked out the window, he was there, staring. He seemed to know things about them that they hadn't told anyone. One evening after dinner, Emily couldn't stand it any longer. When the knock on the door came, she knew it was him. This time, she wasn't going to let him stand there, just watching. She had to know who he was. When she opened the door, she saw Lily's smile, bright and welcoming. "You're back," she said cheerfully, as though she'd been waiting for him all along. Emily stood behind her, arms crossed, her eyes narrowing. She was done pretending. "I didn't catch your name," Emily said, her voice cool and sharp. The man Adam turned his gaze to her. For a moment, the smile faltered, but then he regained his composure. "Adam," he said smoothly. "Adam Hollis. I live just down the street. I wanted to make sure you girls were settling in okay." But Emily couldn't ignore the way he looked at Lily. It was the same look he'd given them before, the same unnerving, possessive stare that made her skin crawl. Before Emily could respond, Lily was already inviting him in, her laughter light, carefree, as if nothing was wrong. But Emily didn't trust him. She couldn't. Something was off, and whatever it was getting worse. The days in the house began to blur together, each one colder, darker than the last. It wasn't just the house. It was the weight of something else, something older, far more dangerous, that seemed to be growing stronger with each passing day. Emily could feel it in the air, thick and oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in on them. The house felt alive, breathing in the cold air with them, and the weight of the silence was more suffocating than any noise could ever be. Emily spent more time locked in her room, staring out the window, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread that clung to her like a second skin. Every time she looked out, the same figure, Adam, stood just across the street, watching, unblinking. His presence was like a shadow over everything, pulling at her. But it wasn't just the house. It was Lily. Her twin sister was changing. It started slowly, little things at first. Lily's laugh, once so carefree, began to have an eerie edge to it. She would talk to herself, or more often to the empty space in the room, as if someone or something was listening. Emily would catch her standing still in the hallway, staring blankly at the walls, as though waiting for something to happen. It wasn't like her. Lily had always been the grounded one, the practical twin, but now she was lost in something else. One night, Emily woke to the sound of her sister whispering in the darkness. It was a low, unfamiliar voice, full of dread, like the words were being dragged from somewhere deep inside. Emily called out her name, but there was no answer. Terrified, she rushed to her sister's room. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Lily sitting at her desk, her back to the door. She was muttering softly, her fingers tracing strange patterns in the air, like she was drawing invisible symbols. "Lily," Emily's voice trembled, breaking the stillness, but Lily didn't respond. The air in the room felt heavy, thick, almost suffocating. Emily's heart raced as she stepped forward, but she hesitated. Something wasn't right. She could feel the house watching them. "Lily," she called again, louder this time, her fear growing. But her sister didn't turn around. When Emily reached her, she grabbed Lily by the shoulder and shook her hard. The response was immediate. Lily's head snapped around unnervingly fast, her eyes wide and glazed over, as though they weren't even seeing Emily but something else, something far more distant, far more terrifying. "What are you doing?" Emily demanded, her voice quivering with panic. Lily blinked twice, then smiled a smile that didn't belong to her. It was too wide, too empty. "I'm waiting, Em," she said, her voice distant, hollow. "He's here. He's been waiting for us." "Who?" Emily asked, her stomach tightening with dread. Lily didn't answer. Instead, she stood up suddenly, her movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with broken strings. She walked toward the door, her eyes fixed on the dark corners of the room. "It's time," she whispered, her voice slow and deliberate, as though she were speaking from somewhere far away. "We have to invite him in." Before Emily could respond, the door slammed shut behind her with a violent bang, and the room was plunged into darkness. The days that followed were a blur. Emily couldn't get the image of Lily's vacant expression out of her mind. It was as though something inside her sister had snapped, and whatever it wasn't human anymore. The house had started to feel like a prison, its walls closing in around them, suffocating her. The temperature in the rooms dropped sharply, and Emily could see her breath in the air, even with the fireplace roaring. But Lily seemed oblivious to it all. She spent hours in the living room, staring at the walls, muttering to the shadows that no one else could see. She didn't seem to need sleep or food. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, as though she were listening to something that no one else could hear. And then there was Adam, always there, watching, always just across the street. Emily tried to ignore him, but his gaze felt like a weight pressing on her chest. It was like the house was feeding off their fear, growing darker with every passing day. She had to stop it. She had to save her sister. But how? One evening, Emily could take it no longer. The house felt like it was twisting around them, pulling them into its dark heart. The air felt thicker, like it was heavy with something ancient and malicious. "Lily, we need to talk," Emily said, her voice trembling as she stepped into the living room. Her sister was sitting on the floor, her back to the wall, her fingers playing with something invisible in the air, as though she were caught in a trance. Lily's head snapped around at the sound of Emily's voice, and for a brief moment, Emily thought she saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. But then the smile returned, wider than before, unnervingly so. It wasn't her sister anymore. It was something else. "You're still scared," Lily said softly, her voice taunting. "You're still holding on to the world that doesn't matter anymore. This place. It's where we belong." "I don't understand," Emily whispered, her throat dry. "What's happening to you, Lily? You're not yourself anymore." Lily tilted her head, her eyes fixed on Emily with an unreadable expression. "It's already begun, Em. The house. It's calling to us. It's showing me the truth." The shadows in the room seemed to stir, crawling along the walls, reaching toward them like tendrils of smoke. Emily felt a chill run through her, and for a fleeting moment she wondered if she was losing her mind. But the air was heavier now, as though it was suffocating her. She had to get Lily out of this place before it consumed her completely. Before Emily could say another word, a voice low and raspy whispered from the corner of the room, "She won't leave. None of you will." Emily froze. Her blood turned to ice as she turned toward the corner. There, standing just out of the reach of the dim light, was a figure, a dark shape, distorted and twisted, as though it were made of smoke and shadows. Its eyes glowed faintly, yellow like dying embers, and it stared at Emily with an intensity that made her stomach churn. "Who are you?" Emily choked out, her voice barely audible. The figure didn't answer. It just stood there, flickering in and out of existence like a broken reflection. The air around it grew thick, suffocating. It felt like the very walls of the house were pressing in on her. "Lily," Emily whispered, her voice shaking. "What is this? What have you done?" Lily didn't answer. She just sat there, eyes wide, transfixed by the figure in the corner. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. The figure took a step forward, its shape warping like smoke. And then, the voice spoke again. "We've waited long enough. The bond is complete. She's ours." The shadow lunged and Emily screamed, stumbling backward as the darkness engulfed her sister. For a moment she saw Lily's face fear and desperation, and then it was gone, swallowed by the abyss. "No, no, this isn't happening," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with terror. The figure in the corner laughed, a low, rasping sound that echoed through the walls. "It's only just begun." It had been days since Lily's possession. The house had grown even colder, its walls now a constant source of low groans and whispers. Emily couldn't get any rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lily's empty, vacant gaze staring back at her. But it wasn't just Lily who was lost to the house, it was Adam too. Since that fateful night when the shadows first enveloped Lily, Adam had become more and more distant toward Emily. At first she thought it was just her imagination, but now she couldn't deny it. Adam, the charming, mysterious guy from the neighborhood who once seemed so eager to welcome them into the town, was now only interested in Lily. It started with little things. He would knock on the door, and Lily would always answer, her smile too wide, too knowing. Adam's visits became more frequent. He no longer looked at Emily with the same warmth, the same curiosity. His gaze was fixed entirely on Lily, like a moth drawn to a flame. Emily watched from the shadows, her heart sinking each time she saw them together. She was the one who had always been there for Lily, the one who protected her, loved her unconditionally. But now it seemed like Lily was slipping away, and no one, least of all Adam, cared enough to notice. One night after Adam had left, Emily couldn't hold it in any longer. She confronted her sister in the hallway, her hands trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Lily," Emily demanded, her voice shaking, "what is going on? Why are you acting like this? Why are you so different?" Lily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she just stood there, her eyes distant and unfocused, as if the words didn't quite register with her anymore. Emily's frustration boiled over. "You're letting him, Adam, control you," Emily shouted. "I know he's been visiting you. He's been ignoring me, and now you're letting him into our house, into our lives. You're letting him into your heart." Lily's head tilted slightly, her lips curling into that unsettling, wide smile. "You don't understand, Em. He's not just a man. He's a part of this place. He's meant for me." Emily felt a coldness seep into her bones as her sister spoke. The words hit her like a slap, but they were nothing compared to the look in Lily's eyes. There was no sign of the sister she had known, only the cold, empty shell of someone else, someone under the control of whatever dark force lurked in the house. "You're not yourself, Lily," Emily said, her voice breaking. "This isn't you. Please." But Lily only laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "You still don't get it, do you? I am myself, Em. I'm becoming more than I was. And soon you'll understand. You'll see." Before Emily could say another word, Lily turned away and walked into her room, leaving her sister standing there in the dark, feeling more alone than ever. In the days that followed, Emily watched as Adam and Lily's relationship grew stronger. They spent more time together alone, away from her. Emily couldn't understand what was happening. She had always been the one who protected Lily, but now her sister was slipping further and further into Adam's grasp, as if she had become someone else entirely. One evening, Emily found herself standing in the kitchen, staring out the window at the darkened street. The moonlight bathed the yard in an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the lawn. She was lost in thought, consumed by jealousy and hurt, when she heard the doorbell ring. Without thinking, she opened the door to find Adam standing there, a smile playing on his lips. "Hi," he said, his voice warm, almost too warm. "Is Lily around?" "She's inside," Emily replied, her voice tight. "But I don't think she's—" "I need to talk to her," Adam cut her off, his tone suddenly colder. Is she home? Something in his voice, something about the way he looked at her, sent a chill down Emily's spine. It was as if he had no interest in her at all, only in Lily. As if she was invisible. "She's upstairs," Emily said through gritted teeth. "But you might want to." Before she could finish, Adam was already stepping inside, brushing past her like she wasn't even there. Emily watched him retreat upstairs, her hands clenching into fists. But as the door closed behind him, something snapped inside her. She couldn't let this happen, not to Lily, and certainly not to her. Upstairs, Emily found Lily in her room, sitting on the bed, staring at the wall as if in a trance. Her eyes were dull, unfocused. The air in the room was thick, and Emily could feel the coldness emanating from her sister's body, a stark contrast to the warmth of the house. "Lily," Emily said, trying to get her attention. "He's using you. Can't you see that?" Lily didn't respond. She simply stared ahead, unblinking, as if Emily wasn't even in the room. "Why won't you listen to me?" Emily asked, her voice rising. "You're my sister, Lily. You're my twin. We're supposed to protect each other, not let some stranger take you away." Suddenly, Lily's head snapped to the side, and she looked at Emily with those wide, dark eyes, her lips curling into that same unnerving smile. "Stranger," Lily repeated, her voice dripping with malice. "You think he's a stranger? He's the one who's been here all along. He's always been with us, Em. You just didn't see it." The room grew colder still, and Emily's breath fogged in the air. The shadows in the corners seemed to grow, swirling and twisting like tendrils of smoke. The house itself seemed to be closing in on her. "I see him now," Lily, Emily said, her voice barely a whisper, the weight of her words sinking in. "And I don't like what I see." But before Lily could answer, the sound of footsteps came from the hallway. Adam was at the door, watching them, his dark eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his tone eerily calm. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. "No, it's not all right." Lily stood up slowly, her movements stiff and unnatural. She turned to Adam, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "It's fine. We're just talking, Em and me. Right." But Emily knew it wasn't fine. The tension between them had reached its breaking point. Adam was taking Lily, piece by piece, and whatever was left of her sister was slipping further away with every passing second. The house had claimed her. And Emily knew it was only a matter of time before it claimed her, too. The days bled into one another, a gray blur of dread, jealousy, and twisted emotions. Emily could feel her heart shattering with each passing moment, each glance that Lily exchanged with Adam, each soft smile Lily gave him, smiles that had once been for Emily alone. It was as if the very essence of their bond, of their twinship, was slowly being erased, consumed by something darker, something she couldn't fight. Emily's love for Lily, her fierce protection, had now turned into a raw, painful ache. Every time she tried to reach her sister, she was met with coldness, with a look that screamed of betrayal. The house, too, seemed to respond to Emily's agony. The walls groaned, the shadows seemed to deepen, and the temperature dropped even further. It was as if the house itself were feeding off her pain, tightening its grip on the sisters, isolating Emily more with every passing moment. The whispers had grown louder, almost like an invisible presence was watching her every move. Lily no longer saw her the way she used to. Emily wasn't her confidante, her protector, or even her sister anymore. She was just a spectator to the unraveling of everything they once were. One evening, as the storm outside battered against the house, Emily found herself once again standing at the top of the stairs, watching Lily and Adam from afar. They were in the living room, sitting close together, speaking in hushed tones. Adam's hand was on Lily's shoulder, a touch that sent a jolt of panic through Emily's chest. She was tired of waiting, tired of watching them together, knowing that the girl she had grown up with, the girl she had always trusted, was slipping further and further away. She had to do something. With her heart pounding, Emily descended the stairs, each step heavy with the weight of her decision. She had to confront them. She had to get answers. She couldn't lose Lily to this darkness. As she entered the living room, the air grew unnaturally cold, almost as if the house itself was holding its breath. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift, crawling like dark tendrils that reached out to pull her in. Adam looked up, his gaze flickering over her with a hint of something unreadable, something almost predatory. Lily didn't even glance up. She just kept her focus on the floor, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Emily's voice trembled, but there was fire in her words. "Lily, we need to talk." Lily didn't respond. She didn't even blink. Adam, however, stood up, his tall figure looming over Emily. "What's wrong, Em?" he asked, his tone too smooth, too calm. "Is something bothering you?" "You're the one who's bothering me," Emily snapped, her voice rising. She glared at Lily. "What's happening to you? Why are you doing this?" Lily finally lifted her head, but her expression was cold, distant, like someone who was no longer familiar. "I don't understand what you're talking about," she said flatly, her voice detached. "There's nothing wrong." Emily could feel her heart cracking as the words left her sister's lips. "Nothing wrong? You're not the same, Lily. You're acting like a completely different person. What happened to you? What happened to us?" Lily's eyes narrowed and she stood up slowly, her movements stiff, controlled. It was a jarring contrast to the carefree girl Emily had once known. "You're being selfish, Emily," she said softly, almost like a warning. "I'm not yours to keep anymore. I don't belong to you. I belong to something greater. Something that's calling to me." Emily's breath caught in her throat as she looked between her sister and Adam. His smile grew wider, colder, as if he were enjoying watching Emily fall apart. "Lily, please," Emily cried, her voice breaking. "This isn't you. You're my sister, my twin. We've always been together. Don't let this house take you from me." Lily took a step forward, and Emily could see the glimmer of something dark in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. "I am yours," Lily whispered, her voice like ice, "but not the way you think. I'm his now. He needs me." Adam took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. "It's time for her to let go of you, Em," he said, his voice low and almost mocking. "She's meant for something far greater than your childish love." Before Emily could react, Lily's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. "Don't," Lily hissed, her voice now full of venom. "You've always been in my way, Emily. Always trying to protect me, always trying to hold me back. You never saw me for what I am, for what I could be. But now I do. And it's too late for you." Emily felt the cold sting of betrayal deep in her chest. Her own sister was turning against her, siding with this thing that had taken hold of her, siding with Adam, who now stood with them, watching, waiting. The room seemed to close in around her, the shadows growing thicker, darker. The walls pulsed with a rhythm, like a heartbeat, and the cold air pressed against her skin. She felt as though the house itself were alive, watching, feeding off her pain. "Lily," "No," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "Please don't do this. You're my sister. We've always been together. You can't just..." But before she could finish, Lily shoved her back hard. Emily stumbled, crashing against the wall, her breath knocked from her lungs. She looked up to see Adam smiling, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is your doing, isn't it?" Emily spat, fury rising. "You've been manipulating her, using her for whatever twisted purpose you have. She doesn't belong to you." Adam stepped closer, his smile widening into something predatory. "She belongs to no one but herself now," he said softly. "And in time she will see that. The darkness is ours, Emily. The house will take her, and she will be the one to lead it." A chill swept through Emily, colder than she'd ever felt. It wasn't just the house that was haunted. It was Lily, and she had become something else entirely. The girl Emily had loved, had protected, was no longer there. Suddenly, everything went dark. The room was swallowed by an impenetrable blackness, and Emily's heart pounded in her chest. The shadows closed in, pressing against her as the whispers from the house grew louder, more insistent. Lily, her sister, was gone. The house had taken her. Lily, Emily screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness. The house had never been more oppressive. The walls groaned with a strange, guttural rhythm, like the beating of a heart that wasn't human. Emily could feel it, the pulse of the house, thick with dark energy, closing in around her. Every corner, every shadow seemed alive, watching her, waiting. The air was cold, damp, suffocating, and with each passing moment, it felt as though the house itself was drawing its final breath, preparing to consume everything. But it wasn't just the house she feared now. It was Lily. The sister she had known, loved, and protected all her life was no longer the person she had once been. Lily was gone, replaced by something darker, something that could not be saved. The transformation that had begun in Chapter 4 had fully taken root, and the girl standing before Emily was no longer her twin. Emily stood in the middle of the living room, her fists clenched, her body shaking with a mix of terror and rage. Adam's laughter echoed from the hallway, deep and hollow, a sound that seemed to reverberate within the very walls of the house. It wasn't just his laughter, there was something in it, something that echoed the house's heartbeat, a rhythm that seemed to grow faster with each passing moment. She couldn't let him win. She couldn't let this house take her sister, destroy everything they had. She had to fight back, she had no choice. The door to the living room creaked open, and there he was. Adam. His eyes gleamed in the dim light, his expression as calm and cold as ever. He stepped into the room slowly, his presence suffocating, like a shadow that swallowed the light. The moment he entered, the air seemed to thicken, pressing in on her chest. The heartbeat of the house quickened, echoing in her skull. "You don't belong here," he said softly, his voice like silk, yet laced with malice. "This house was never meant for you. You're just a part of the past, and it's time to move on." "You don't control me," Emily spat, her voice trembling with fury. "And you don't control my sister." Adam didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, his teeth flashing in the dark. "Lily is mine now. She's become something greater than you can understand. She doesn't need you anymore." The coldness in his voice sent a shiver down Emily's spine, but she forced herself to stand tall. She would not back down, not this time. She could feel the house's pulse beating in time with her heart, as if it were trying to drown her in its rhythm, to take control of her as it had taken control of Lily. But Emily would not succumb. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, twisting shadows across the room. Emily could feel the house's heartbeat grow faster, more frantic. The walls trembled, as if the house itself was alive, sensing the confrontation. She knew that whatever was happening inside this cursed house was coming to a head. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further. A low, rumbling sound filled the room, like the growl of some unseen beast. And then Lily. She appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes darkened, as though the life in her had been drained completely. She stood there, her body stiff, her expression unreadable. "Lily," Emily whispered, stepping forward. "Please, come back. You're still in there. I know you are." Lily's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her voice low and haunting. "I'm not the same, Em. I found something better, something more powerful than your love. I don't need you anymore." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "Please don't say that. You're my sister. We're twins. We're meant to be together." But Lily just shook her head, her gaze distant, like she was looking right through Emily. "You never understood, did you? You always tried to protect me, to keep me safe. But that was your weakness. You were never meant to protect me. Adam, he's the one who understands me. He's the one who sees me for what I really am." Adam stepped forward, his hand resting on Lily's shoulder possessively. "She's mine now," he said, his voice dark and final. "And you're just a distraction." Suddenly, the house seemed to shift. The shadows in the corners of the room grew darker, moving in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The walls seemed to pulse, the very air vibrating with an eerie energy. Emily could feel the presence of the house closing in on her, suffocating her, and she knew that time was running out. She had to act, and she had to act fast. The room grew colder, the darkness thickening around them. Emily could see her breath in the air, the frost forming on the walls, but she didn't care. She had one chance. She had to find a way to break the hold this place had on Lily. She had to save her sister before it was too late. Lily, Emily screamed, her voice breaking. Don't let him control you. Don't let this house consume you. You're stronger than this. I know you are. Lily's face twitched, a flicker of recognition flashing in her eyes just for a moment. But then, the darkness took over again, and the smile returned, wider than before. You should have let go, Emily, Lily said, her voice cold. Now it's too late. The shadows erupted around them. Adam raised his hand, and the walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the dark energy surging through the house. The ground beneath Emily's feet trembled, and the house groaned as if it were alive, twisting in agony. Suddenly, Emily felt herself being pulled toward the center of the room, her body yanked as if by invisible strings. The walls seemed to close in on her, and she could hear whispers, horrible, guttural whispers filling the air, as though the house itself was speaking. Lily, Emily cried out, reaching for her sister, but the darkness was too thick, too overwhelming. She could barely see through the shadows. Adam's voice rang out, mocking, cold, "It's over, Em. She's already gone." The shadows swarmed around Emily, but she fought back, pulling with all her strength against the pull of the house. She wasn't going to let it win. She wasn't going to lose Lily. With every ounce of her willpower, Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against her sister's. For a moment, the connection felt real, stronger than it had in days. But then, the shadows came again, swirling between them, separating them, and Emily felt a wave of cold, bitter despair flood over her. No, Emily screamed, tears streaming down her face. I won't let you take her. I won't let you have her. In that instant, the house seemed to scream a deafening, guttural wail that shook the very foundations of the old house. The walls cracked, the floor beneath them buckled, and for a brief moment, everything went still. And then, in the blink of an eye, Lily's eyes flickered, filled with horror, a scream ripping from her throat as she reached out to Emily. But before Emily could reach her, Adam pulled Lily into the shadows, and the last thing Emily saw was the darkness swallowing her sister whole. The house had fallen silent. The screams had faded, and the shadows that once devoured everything now stood still, frozen as if holding their breath. But Emily knew better. This wasn't peace. It was the calm before the final storm. The house was waiting, watching. Her body ached from the battles she'd already fought, but her thoughts were consumed by one thing. She had tried everything. She had fought with every ounce of strength she had. But Adam had won. The house had swallowed her sister whole, leaving Emily alone in its suffocating grasp. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. The walls no longer just pulsed, they quivered, rippling like a living, breathing entity. The whispers, those horrible, guttural murmurs returned, louder, more insistent, and Emily realized the truth: the house wasn't merely alive, it had evolved. It had learned from their fear, their pain, and now it wanted more. Suddenly, the floor beneath her cracked with a deafening roar. Emily stumbled, catching herself against the wall as the entire house seemed to shake with unholy energy. A deep growl vibrated through the room, and in the center of the living room, a swirling mass of darkness began to take form. Adam's voice cut through the chaos, twisted and distorted, echoing as if it came from every corner of the house. You think you can defeat me? You think you can defeat us? Emily turned sharply, her heart pounding as Adam's figure emerged from the swirling shadows, not the man she had once seen, but something monstrous. His body flickered like a mirage, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light that pierced through the darkness. He was no longer just a man, he was the house. You're nothing but a puppet, Emily hissed, her voice trembling but fierce. You don't own her. You don't own me. Adam's twisted smile widened. Lily chose me, Emily. She saw the truth that your love, your protection, was nothing but a cage. You couldn't save her then, and you won't save her now. Before Emily could respond, the front door burst open with a crash, and Lily stepped into the room, or what was left of her. Her body was grotesquely altered, her movements jerky and unnatural, her eyes black and empty as the void. But as Emily stared, she saw a flicker of something human buried deep within those eyes. A fragment of her sister. "Lily," Emily cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "I know you're still in there. Fight it. Please fight it for me." For a moment, the darkness in Lily's eyes seemed to falter. Her lips quivered, and a tear streaked down her pale cheek. But the shadows wrapped around her like chains, and the thing that had taken her snarled, its face contorted into a grotesque grin. Adam's voice boomed. "You'll never save her, Emily. She's mine. And soon you will be too." Emily backed away, her mind racing. She needed something, anything that could break this unholy grip on her sister. She remembered the rumors, the stories about the house, the heart. The air shifted, colder and sharper. The whispers grew louder, and she felt it a pull, like an unseen force guiding her. She spun around, her gaze locking onto the far corner of the room where the shadows were deepest. There, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, was a small, glowing stone. Emily's breath caught. She didn't have time to think. Adrenaline surged as she bolted toward the stone, but Lily lunged at her with inhuman speed, claws outstretched. Emily ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding her sister's attack. She scrambled to her feet, her eyes locked on the faint light ahead. "Lily," Emily screamed, her voice raw with emotion. "You have to fight this. You're stronger than him, stronger than this house. Please come back to me." Lily froze mid-step. Her body trembled and her head snapped up, her blackened eyes flickering with a spark of recognition. "Emily," she whispered, her voice weak, trembling. "Help me." Adam roared with fury. The shadows around him writhed and lashed out, forming tendrils that coiled around Emily's arms, pulling her back. The stone pulsed faster, brighter, as if urging her forward. Emily screamed, pulling with all her strength against the shadows, her fingers clawing at the floor as she fought toward the heart. "You won't win," Emily, Adam bellowed. "This house is eternal. It will consume you, just as it consumed her." Emily ignored him, her focus unshakable. She reached the stone, her hand trembling as it hovered over the surface. The whispers in her mind grew deafening, begging her to stop, to let go. "Lily," Emily shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. I'll always love you. Please fight for me. Fight for us." The room erupted in chaos. The walls buckled, the floor cracked, and a blinding light shot from the stone. Emily screamed as her hand slammed down onto its surface. A deafening wail tore through the house, a sound of anguish and fury as the stone shattered beneath Emily's touch. The shadows recoiled, writhing in agony as the house itself began to collapse. Adam's form flickered and dissolved into nothingness, his voice fading into a guttural scream. "Lily," Emily cried, reaching for her sister as the room disintegrated around them. The shadows released their grip on Lily, and she fell to her knees, her body trembling. Her eyes, now her own, filled with tears as she looked up at Emily. "I'm so sorry," Lily whispered, her voice broken. Emily rushed to her, pulling her sister into her arms as the house crumbled around them. The sisters clung to each other, their tears mingling as the walls came crashing down. When Emily opened her eyes, the sun was rising. She and Lily lay on the grass outside the ruins of the house, the faint scent of ash lingering in the air. The house was gone, reduced to rubble, and with it, the dark presence that had haunted them. Lily stirred, her eyes red but clear. "Emily," she murmured, "you saved me." Emily smiled through her tears, her hand gripping Lily's tightly. "We saved each other." The sisters sat together, watching the dawn break over the horizon, the light chasing away the last remnants of shadow. They were free.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more. See you next time.